This is blasphemy for the religious classes. Everything that we say here is contradictory to what the religions are trying to teach you. No, Waheguru is the only name for God. It's certainly something that I've pondered myself. So the question is around within the Guru Granth Sahib, which is the sacred text of the Sikh tradition. The word Waheguru, it actually appears about 15 or 16 times, depending on the spelling of it. And as the person asking the question rightly points out, they're not even written by the Gurus. So why has this word now become more prominent? There's two ways we can look at answering this question. One is around the history of it, and one is around the practicality of it. For me, my analysis of the history is only my own interpretation of it. And it becomes clear to me that what Guru Nanak was doing was that he was a disruptor. He was there to bring spirituality to the masses, and he identified what some of the problems were. And some of the problems were the very rigid institutions that were there. So Guru Nanak had to introduce new things to the world to break the shackles and say, regardless of which institution you belong, whichever you belong to, you can join this practice. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji creates new terminology, new languages, new scripts. Even the Gurmukhi script is all to take away the dominance of the religious classes that are there at the time. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji does introduce this word Waheguru. And certainly you're right in saying that in the Guru Granth Sahib the word Waheguru doesn't become dominant. Actually it becomes dominant a little bit later. If you look at Guru Gobind Singh Ji's writing, the word Waheguru becomes a lot more prominent at that point. So what's clear is over these 200-300 years history that the words and the institutions of Sikhi are starting to become a little bit more solidified. That's my interpretation of the history of it. I reject this idea that the word is in Guru Granth Sahib, but it's not written by the Gurus, so somehow it's inferior. Because that's saying that there are some Shabads in Guru Granth Sahib that are better because they're written by the Gurus, and some Shabads are not because they're not written by the Gurus. Let's not be mistaken. Guru Granth Sahib is the Guru. If it's in Guru Granth Sahib, it's written by the Guru. The Guru Granth Sahib is the Guru. It's not the Guru of the words of Guru Nanak are better than the words of somebody else. That is not the way to look at it. Remember that the Guru is the entire script, the wisdom in its entirety. That's the textual side of it. The practical side of it is, you're absolutely right that this word has become overly dominant, in my opinion, within the Sikh tradition. There are so many beautiful mantras in Guru Granth Sahib, so many wonderful names for God, and yet the Sikhs, in their desire to separate themselves from every other tradition, have decided that they're not going to chant any other mantra, even though those mantras are in Guru Granth Sahib. So this is why I always say, what is the name that you want to call? So in your own lives, in your own families, you probably have a different name that your families call you than the name that you call yourselves at work. If you're in a relationship, a loving relationship with your partner, you can have multiple names for that partner. And they all mean the same person, depending on where is your affection at that point. You don't call your partner by their formal name all the time. You can call them a number of different things, and they all mean the same thing. You should not be... Now imagine somebody comes to you and says, don't speak to your partner that way, only speak to your partner by their formal name. Does that make sense? It makes no sense. Your relationship with your partner is personal. Your relationship with your child is personal. With your family members is personal. You know what your relationship is. What is your relationship with the divine? It goes back to a question that we had about self-sovereignty and leadership. What is your relationship? Not what somebody tells you. So there is nobody who can tell you that this is the name of God and nothing else is correct. If it is, those people haven't connected. They don't know what they're talking about. All they're talking about is tribalism. This is the word that our tribe uses. Our religion uses this word. If you use any other word, then you're betraying our tribe. That's ultimately what they're saying. There are beautiful mantras, there are beautiful names for God. Try them all. There's a wonderful line from Bhagat Kabir ji. He says, Kabir, Allah ki kar bandagi. Meditate on Allah. How many of you have tried to use that mantra? It's such a beautiful mantra. Allahu Akbar. God is the greatest. If that is resonating with you, make that your mantra. Come up with your own mantra. It is your relationship. And bear in mind, this is blasphemy for the religious classes. Everything that we say here is contradictory to what the religions are trying to teach you. No, Waheguru is the only name for God. And they will take one line from Bhai Gurdas ji, Waheguru Guru Mantar hai. You could argue that's not even in Guru Granth Sahib ji. What about all of the different names for God? Ram, Ram, Har, Har, Tu Hi. There are so many names for God. Guru Nanak didn't limit his names for God. Why should you? Why should we, the students of that Guru, limit? So in any tradition, the word Yahweh, I learned something beautiful about the word Yahweh, the old Christian name for God. The word Yahweh sounds like the sound of your breath going in and out. Your very breath becomes your mantra. How are you going to connect today is the question you should ask.